Talk to me about your preaching mentors.
Oh my God. I mean, that for me is, again, the grace of God put in my life, mentors, both vicarious, because when I was a student at Bishop College, I fell in love with Martin Luther King Jr. And William Augustus Jones. Of course, I got to meet Dr. Jones. I did not get to meet Dr. King, but I studied them and this whole social justice approach to preaching, utilizing poetic, imagery and language. I mean, they both did it brilliantly. And then, of course, the Lyman Beecher lectures with Dr. Taylor had come out a few years before, so I read his Lyman Beecher lectures, and he became a vicarious mentor. But in terms of direct mentoring, man, I was first enthralled by preaching. I mean, I loved my dad and my granddad, but I took them for granted. But Fredrick George Sampson came to do the citywide revival at Third Baptist in San Francisco. We hosted it. And I was mesmerized, man. And I'm talking about, I'm 12, 13, 14 years old, and this man quotes Shakespeare, Langston Hughes, gives an illustration about Frida or Frederick, his children. And I'm like, and he had a joke that when he came to town, my parents knew when they couldn't find me, I'd be at the revival to hear him. I mean, I would not miss Fredrick George Sampson. And I said, if I ever preach, that's what I want to do. I want to quote poetry, literature. I want to use my kids as an illustration. I mean, he established that for me. And then, so he was really my first, I'll put it like that, my first just mentor where it was like, okay, I have to do this. So by the time I started preaching, I was going to mix the disciplines like Dr. Sampson. I was going to try to be illustrative. And then I go to Bishop College, and Harry S. Wright is dean of the chapel. And again, you talk about poetry, illustrations, simplistic profundity. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. And then he had this piece where he used as a rhetorical mechanism repetition. And I said, I love that. I love that. So again, it basically went from Fred Sampson to Harry S. Wright, and all of them are starting to impact and influence me. And then I met Manuel Scott Sr. And Manuel Scott Sr. taught me how to basically do what they had modeled, because he basically took, and Dr. Harry Wright told me, he said, I always wear sermonic eyeglasses. My homiletical glasses are on when I read the paper, when I have experiences. I'm wondering, what is God saying? And so I said, okay, that sounds good. So Manuel Scott and I are growing very close. And man, we're driving one day, or I'm driving him to Waco, and we get in the car, and so I said, Doc, it's hot, do you want the air conditioner on? He said, you're driving, I'm the passenger. If you get to Waco safe, I'm gonna get to Waco safe. He said, don't you wish our churches had that kind of sense where, pastor's driving, let's make the pastor comfortable and we're gonna all get there safely. I said, that's how you do that. That's how you do that. And he would do that all the time, where he would drop a sermonic gem through just talking about some experience in life. And so I tried to learn to do that as I listened to him. And one day I got it, and I couldn't wait to tell him. I'm reading the USA Today newspaper, and they're talking about a hurricane shelter in Miami that had survived Hurricane Andrew, all these bad hurricanes, but they were having to destroy it because termites. So it had survived hurricanes, but little termites ate away at it. And so I said, Doc, is that it? He said, that's it right there. And so I wear homiletical eyeglasses now all the time. I'm looking for. My plane arrived late today because I get to the airport, we're supposed to leave at 7:05. We don't leave at 7:05 because we literally get out to the runway and they discover there's something wrong with the plane. And so we go back to get the plane checked. They said, listen, we're gonna have to change planes. Well, the original flight was a Super 80. The flight we moved to was a 737. So the Super 80, I'd gotten there kind of late, and so they gave my seat away, which ticked me off. And so I'm in coach, and I'm not appreciating that. And then because the plane broke down, we go back, we change, there's more room on the 737. And so I get paged, Fredrick Haynes, please come forward. God must love you because you get upgraded, you're gonna ride first class. And so the first thought that came to mind, I have to do a funeral this weekend of someone who really had a rough time their last years physically. And I'm using Saturday at the funeral that their plane, got called back in. It's time for them to go home, but they're getting upgraded.
Right.
And so God will literally allow, this plane to break down. But the good news is, on our way home, we get upgraded. So for me, again, I got these glasses on all the time. And again, that's Manuel Scott, Fred Sampson, Harry S. Wright. But then I'm trying to figure out, okay, so how do I do this? Because all of them great preachers they are, but in terms of the justice emphasis, maybe not there, which is what I was still hungry for. And so in Dallas, we have Zan Holmes. And Zan Wesley Holmes is both homiletician, he pastored St. Luke, and Zan was doing it. But then I heard two preachers at one time that just did it for me. And that's Charles G. Adams and Jeremiah Wright. And when I heard them, I'm like, and Charles Adams, was shouting people while talking about justice. I mean, just people running around crazy. Hearing Charles Adams deal with justice. I say, that's where I'm trying to go, because Martin King would not be known for shouting people necessarily, but Charles Adams, he had it all. And then here comes Jeremiah Wright with this Afro consciousness that grabbed me. And I'm like, there it is. So basically, when you look at what I have tried to do through the years, it's almost a gumbo, a gospel gumbo. Fred Sampson, Harry S. Wright, Manuel Scott, Martin Luther King Jr., Gardner C. Taylor, William Augustus Jones, Jeremiah Wright, Charles Adams, all of them. And I have to give special props to my pastor, Amos Brown at Third Baptist in San Francisco, because he not only preached it, but he did it. And so all of that, I mean, when I talk about my mentors, I just get hyped because they fed into me, especially those I have a relationship with, and they did it so generously, so generously. And I guess, and this mentor wouldn't be considered a preacher, but she taught me so much. I buried her last week, Homazel Davis. She was my counselor and teacher at Abraham Lincoln High School in San Francisco, and she told me I was going to be all of this and all of that when I didn't see it. But she was the one, I mean, basically every poem I know, I learned from Homazel Davis. And she taught me so much as it relates to literature and how to incorporate that in my oratorical presentation. So for me, again, mentors, and I'll say this and I'm done. I don't know if I'll ever live up to this, but a preacher said to me when I was in my 20s, he said, I'm gonna watch where you go in life because you can always tell where someone is going by the mentors they have. And that blessed me because, of course, Carter G. Woodson, you become what you behold. And I have beheld the best.